In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I approach research with AI agents. The version where I run hundreds of thousands of records through verification pipelines or cross reference claims against source databases, and I catch hallucinations before they reach clients. My name's Simon, and I run a two-person consulting practice across 6 industries with over 40 agents in production. If you want help building something like this for your business, links in the description. Let me show you what the system I use actually looks like. Here you have my article generation process. I have a lot of these businesses, and it's natural that I need to do SEO for them. And so when you start thinking about an article, there's a lot of phases that you have to go through. And for me, this is really the baseline. An article starts with research. If I don't know what the topic I'm going to be doing for, I have to do my research. And so what I've done is I've got an ingestion source. So I currently use a few APIs for this, but between RSS feeds and APIs, you have everything you need to get factual information. There's even a new resource called Firehose, which is created by Ahrefs, which allows you to just have all of these things directly ingested by your agent. And it's API first, and it's a wonderful way to get information. So this is how I do my research. I set out and delimit topics, and I get the agent doing research for me. Once that's done, I have it do a plan based on the research it gathered and maybe some documents that I already have in my or previous examples of articles I've done, etc. I have it actually go ahead and create a plan of how is it going to take all these different points of information and create something that is coherent out of it. Once it's done planning, I have it write an article. And this isn't so simple because sometimes you have these situations where you want to create an article, right? And the first version, even as humans, when you create an article, the first version might not be the good one, right? So I often have it do it in phases, and I'll have it do a first draft. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up another agent that's going to be critiquing this. I'm going to do my first draft. I'm going to have what I call a skeptic agent be spun up. And so it's going to critique the first draft, and then it's going to provide that feedback back over to the initial agent, and it's going to do a second draft, and then finally it's going to then go off and maybe even do another round of this. So there might be another round. This whole article generation is just within that right step. Once I'm done all of this, I'm going to do what I call a slop scan, which is AI has a way of writing, and it's frustrating to me, but it's very difficult to stop it writing this way because just the way AIs were built. AIs are just they're these massive data sets, and they got taught on the internet, and so they write like the internet. And there's a lot of that, like the general ways that people write, that's not me. That's not the way I write. And so I've had to really teach the AI the way I write. How do I do that? Well, the Slop scan has 3 components. The first is a tone of voice.md. Like this tone of voice MD is kind of like a master document that I've created over time. That is the way I personally write. It's the fact that I don't like doing signposting, which is the fact of declaring what I'm about to say. If I'm going to say something, I'd rather just say the thing. Or it might be that I don't like quoting the person I'm talking to. AI loves doing this. It's such a clear indication that someone's using AI to write at that point. And then the second component of this is the memory MD, which is I've got this memory document that I'm keeping up to date with regards to certain patterns maybe that I like to use, certain wordings that I like to use, maybe the opening statements that I like. These are things that I want to remember, but I don't necessarily want to remember all the time. When I'm doing coding with Claude Code, I don't necessarily want it to have in mind all the particularities of how I write. And so this is a skill. This is a skill file that is called up only when I'm going through one of those processes. And then finally, after that, I have my AI slop phrases.md, which is a whole bunch of these generic phrases that I just don't want my AI to be using when it's writing articles or doing research. And you might wonder, because initially I said this is how I do research, and why am I talking about article writing? Is I found that it's much better, I get much better results from AI if I'm asking it to write something and to create a very well researched article than if I just tell it to do research. Because doing research without an objective is not a very effective way to get good information. Generally speaking, we're not very clear on exactly what we want. And if we are, then we'll get good results. But 99% of the time, that's just not the case. And so I often ask my AI to generate articles through this process instead of just telling it to do research. Then there's a step here, which is the verify step, which is really important because hallucinations, for example, I have a client who's in the finance industry and they're working with large clients and there's a lot of money at stake. And if you have an agent in production with regards to these kinds of things, there's a huge reputational risk to them. If they send out a bad number or they send out something that's not real, they could both lose a lot of reputation, which is bad in their industry, and of course it's false. And this is something that's very risky, especially in the finance. So oftentimes I'm going to do three-phase verifications, which is I will try to find more than one data source, so dual source data. I will try to do some credibility scoring. So for example, if it's a thing like The Economist, I'm going to rate that quite highly in terms of a source. While if it's something like an SEO farm, of course, I'm not going to rate that as highly. It just does not have the nature of a peer reviewed or a highly reputable media source. And then finally, there's a question of staleness detection. AI models are very good at being confidently wrong. And oftentimes, for example, Opus training data stops in May 2025. So it is convinced that it's still in 2025 while we are in April 2026. And so that gap, that year gap, there's a lot of stuff that has happened in a year. And so I need to check that the model didn't fail silently throughout this process. And it didn't say, I needed to actually source its claims and give me the actual link of the place that it got this information from, so that down the line I can audit it, I can log it, and I can look at that. And so what happens is during this verify step, I have the agent go through this. And what I do, in fact, is here I actually create a JSON file that's got all the factual sources. And so it's easier for the agent to reference the factual sources when they're in this structured format. And finally, then I will deliver that. This is the basic process of getting really high quality research done with an agent. But I want to go a bit more deeply, bit deeper, and actually give you a more hands-on. So what I have here is actually, I've got a blank slate Claude. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a research process. I'm not going to go through the entire article generation process in this, but I do want to start it off so you have an idea of what it looks like when you start building with a research agent and what a good prompt looks like. I want you to start a research project for me. Yesterday, Claude released their Mythos model for research preview, and they haven't opened it up to the general population. What I want us to do is start the process of evaluating this. I want you to go through the RSS feeds for maybe videos and transcripts we have in our database, and I want you to start extracting information that might be relevant with regards to this. The goal here is we are in the research planning phase of this, and we're going to need to really dive deep and figure out what is true from what is false so I can make an educated decision on where Mythos is right now. So what you see is, I like to give I don't believe in one shots is kind of what I'm saying here. I don't believe that an agent is going to be able to find right information right from the get-go, because I don't expect a human to be able to, and we are general intelligences. If I ask an agent to do a big research task, I want to give it a workspace. So I want to give it a notepad. I want to give it a place that it can browse the internet, that it can find sources, that it can go ahead and list these things out and then fact check them afterwards. It's unreasonable to expect agents to be able to like create things, because it's not the raw intelligence that makes a good researcher or a good journalist. It's the methodology. It's the fact that they've gone through the ropes and they understand that they have to attack a problem from multiple angles. They have to generate something that is valuable. And the only way to generate something valuable is to get down to the truth of it as much as possible. And truth is a multifaceted thing. It's something that you can look at from multiple angles and you can inspect it in multiple ways. And there's not often a single path to get to truth. And so I assume the same for my models. And I've done a lot of work to try and give it the tools necessary. And when I say tools, I mean these things like an RSS scraper that's pulling into an SQLite database, or these things like Firehose API, which allows me to go and have these market intelligence agents that are summarizing information on certain subjects. And the goal here is to give the agent all the tools necessary for it to produce quality work. We're in a situation where these things are used for actual production data, for things that are that will people will be making decisions off of, that money's on the line, that maybe even lives are eventually on the line. Errors are not allowed, and a 99.9% might be good, and it's good enough for most industries, and in some industries even that's not good enough and you need 5 nines. And so I think it's a really good approach to think about the agent from a more objective perspective. So here, what we have here is it's gone ahead and it's done this. I love it because it always does this and it spins up multiple agents to go ahead and do these things. So here I've opened up the thing and it's got searched thoroughly through my directory for any references with regards to Claude Mythos. And it's gone ahead and it's really found quite a lot of things that it can actually look at. So you have here Anthropic published Mythos preview on April 7th, 2026. These are all factual things. So I know that this is the right direction already. So Mythos preview announced April 7th from the Anthropic blog. It's a high confidence. The internal code name Capybara, Fortune League March. This is medium because it's not officially confirmed. Then I've got not publicly available gated access from multiple sources. So this is high confidence, et cetera, et cetera. And I go down the list, as well as the benchmarks, as well as the safety alignment claims, what's verifiable, what's not verifiable, what's self-reported, what's the own testing. And so it also tells me what's the verification problem here. Everything's coming from Anthropic. And so from a fact-checking perspective, I have to either trust them. So whenever I'm going to be doing research on a topic, I love starting here because it gives me the right framework to go on to the next step. And here I've got a lot of it already gives me the next step. So I will read the primary sources directly. So Anthropic's Glasswing project page, the system card, which is 244 pages long. So I might not get around to that today. I'm going to check my RSS pipeline and make sure that everything's good. And I'm going to go check out other sources if they have access to that, as well as separate the angles of approach, because on big topics like this, I might not just be satisfied with one approach to it. I might want to change the angles to understand the thing more fully. I hope this gives you a clear indication of what it actually looks like to work with agents if I'm doing a research project. Hallucinations aren't really a model problem. They're more of an architecture problem. The model will make stuff up. That's what it does. Your job isn't to hope it doesn't. Your job is to build the system that catches it when it does. And in my opinion, that's something anyone can build.